Okay, I think we're at that 2 minute mark, so we'll just naturally jump in. So hello everyone, Deebs DeFi here. If you don't know me already, I work for Orbital Command. Do a lot of writing for them, blockchain manager for Osmosis, but obviously I do a lot of writing for Terra. Terra Weekly is probably the most notable thing that I do every week that I'm committed to. Typing into the night on Friday because I love it. But I'm really just honored to be able to host this space and be with you all today. So enough about me, though. We have quite a few guests up here that are far more impressive. And so I think we can just jump into introductions of our speakers here. So maybe let's just start with the members from the Astroport team. And you can kind of introduce yourselves. Just tell us who you are, maybe a little bit of background, and then we'll jump on over to Injective team.
Okay, I can start. Hi, everyone. I'm Stefan. I am part of DeFi Labs, and I'm also a contributor to Astroport. I've been a contributor to Astroport since November 2021. So I've been here since before the launch, and previously, before jumping into Cosmos and Astroport, I used to be an ETH head on Ethereum.
Hey guys, I'm Jose, and yeah, Stefan used to be an ETH head and also helped build Reflexor, which is one of the coolest projects on Ethereum in my mind. Actually, an original, but probably a similar thesis to UST. Actually, I know a lot of people here would have been big into Terra. I'm Jose. I'm the head of Delphi Labs. We're contributors to Astroport. Yeah.
Do we have the members from the Injective team? would you like to go next?
Hey guys, this is Eric, co-founder and CEO of Injective Labs. So we're core contributors to Injective, the ecosystem of the blockchain. And before, pretty much an ETH head as well.
Hey guys, this is Mirza. I run the business team here at Injective. Previously was dabbling in crypto more as a VC and spent a couple of years doing that before jumping into Injective.
Right, so great. Thank you all for the introductions. Always good to put a name to a face / profile pic. But I think the best way to start this off, right, is for you all to just talk about your projects each. So we'll start with Astroport. And maybe for our audience and the listeners who may not know, can you just give us a high-level overview of what Astroport is and what it's trying to accomplish?
You want to start, Stefan?
Yeah, sure. So I can start with what Astroport used to be. Astroport used to be an AMM on Terra, initially on Terra 1 and now on Terra 2. But recently, with the Injective announcement, Astroport maybe not became not yet, but will become a multi-chain AMM within Cosmos. And yeah, we picked Injective. I guess many people are kind of wondering why we picked Injective. At least from my personal standpoint, is that I really appreciate teams that kind of stick around in crypto regardless of bull or bear and stick around for the long run. And Injective already proved that they want to stick around and create value. So I'm really excited that Astroport kind of picked to launch there after Terra, or launch there first after Terra.
Yeah. Great description. So for me, the whole point of crypto and certainly what we want to contribute with Delphi Labs is to build like truly decentralized, censorship resistant financial infrastructure, right? Which includes censorship resistant money, also like exchange, margin trading, kind of all the different primitives decentralized. And initially, we chose to contribute on Terra because we thought it was one of the only projects that had a decent shot of building a decentralized stablecoin. Obviously, that didn't work out, and I think the sort of our big question after that was, what's the platform on which we think has the best chance of building something that can be a competitor to a centralized exchange, right? Provide a similar experience to people as a centralized exchange, but be non-custodial, censorship resistant, and have all the qualities of decentralization. And from our perspective, like Injective was one of the top spots for that, because of the on-chain order book, because of the speed. We think it's like within the next 6 months to 2 years, kind of decentralized alternatives are gonna provide very similar UX to centralized exchanges, where you'll be able to kind of do most of your trading on a decentralized alternative without giving up too much in UX. And we think Injective is like one of the forerunners in that. And then in terms of what Astroport is, so I would say like if Astroport's known as a DEX. I'd actually differentiate between a DEX and an AMM, and I think Astroport's more an AMM. So a DEX is, I guess, what I'd say Injective is in this sense, like an L1 DEX, so like a settlement system that lets buyers and sellers come together and express like preferences about a certain asset. Whereas an AMM like Astroport, the goal is really to provide passive liquidity strategies that allow kind of anyone to participate and contribute liquidity to a DEX, right? And so we've already seen obviously the huge success of AMMs, like started with Uniswap and the XYK algorithm. I think there's going to be a lot of innovations, and we hope to contribute to some of that on the algorithm to make for more capital efficient algorithms, integrate them with order books like Injective, and just provide like the best kind of passive liquidity providing experience. And I think the reason that matters is because order books are like tend towards being centralized systems on their own, right? They favor professional market makers. They're a lot like liquidity is largely dominated by professional market makers. If any of those go bankrupt or choose to stop, liquidity dries up, and they're also and so I think AMMs really democratize that and open up the world of liquidity provision to a much wider base. And I think it's like a necessary part of building that decentralized sort of financial infrastructure.
Yeah, I think, like on our side, one of the most exciting part about Astroport and, the notion of really truly democratizing this generally, institutionalized and gate-kept process of market making and liquidity provisioning is, really preventing a lot of the general adoption of kind of like finance and DeFi. And I think one of the most wonderful thing about, AMM and all the amazing things that, Astroport team is working on is, truly to bring capital efficiency, a proper LP model, and also more importantly, really basically, opening up to the idea of providing liquidity onto an order book and, being able to synergize with the overall flow in the system and, maintain a truly dynamic liquidity environment and also capital efficiency without, having all of these like silo liquidity pool and having a lot of, these type of like middlemen and also, like connecting protocol to, try to like kind of basically like linking them all together in some inefficient way. And I think, basically, as an unopinionated underlying financial infrastructure that, Injective as an ecosystem provides, Astroport gets a, truly capture all the value there is within the ecosystem, and at the same time, synergize and kind of combine all the flow and all the liquidity dynamics together to create a, truly efficient and, stronger together type of dynamic.
Yeah, great responses from both teams. And we kind of just ran away with that one, which is great because I think we definitely want to get to those synergies and kind of talk about how the two, how Injective and Astroport are going to work together. But I don't want to lose too many people in the audience because I'm guessing maybe not everyone here is too familiar with Injective. So can you maybe just talk a little bit about yourself, pull back a little bit and, what makes Injective unique, your blockchain?
Yeah. So Injective is, oh yeah, sure. Mirza, go ahead.
Sure thing. Yeah, on a high level, we've been building in the Cosmos ecosystem since the end of 2018. So we were probably one of the first ones exploring sort of what Cosmos has to offer. What we wanted to do at the start was build a very efficient infrastructure for just building decentralized exchanges. And we actually started out by testing out the protocol on Ethereum and then later Polygon, actually, before deciding that Cosmos would allow us to create the most custom infrastructure for this. There are a couple unique advantages of Injective, I would say, just because of how specialized and sector specific, I guess, the blockchain is. So the first aspect is that we prevent any form of front running. So effectively what happens is the way that transactions are ordered with frequent batch auctions enable you to sort of avoid any form of front running that would occur on a typical DEX, right? So no matter if you're building on a slower chain like let's say Ethereum or a faster chain like let's say Solana, you're always going to have this issue. So we sort of fixed it. So in essence, we have prevented MEV, which is a huge issue for larger institutions and also smaller retail traders to come in and trade. And probably the most unique aspect of Injective is we wanted to provide sort of the plug and play tools for developers to come in and build their own applications much faster. What many people don't realize is building a truly decentralized on-chain order book. It sounds quite sexy, but it's very difficult and takes a long time. So by just providing these primitives or modules, users could come in and spin up a new DEX in a matter of days, right? And we've done the same with our options module that's been taken to create new prediction markets, like Frontrunner, which is a big sports betting DEX on Injective. So yeah, on a high level, it's a very fast, very optimized blockchain just for financial applications that just also on top gives you the modules to build your apps quickly.
Yeah. I think another really interesting thing to add is that the entire blockchain and the infrastructure and the way it's designed, the way it's built for Injective is all kind of purpose built and built from the ground up with the DeFi developers and any wants and needs of any DeFi user, or in a more broader sense any financial users in mind. And so this means that the core fundamental problem of MEV and all of these inefficiencies are all addressed and completely abstracted away and prevented on the exchange level. And overall, it also promotes a more highly scalable and highly efficient and blazing fast block production and kind of like a exchange environment. And on top of that, a lot of really, really core and important modules such as Oracle, such as derivatives, etc., are all being kind of maintained and being purpose built for these type of these subset of developers. And over time, this ecosystem is going to evolve more and more optimized and more efficient for these type of builders, where it becomes kind of like an undeniable destination for any DeFi protocols looking to capture these type of events, environment, and cater to these advanced financial users or traditional general public alike.
Yeah, that's great, and I'm glad you brought up kind of the derivatives and that piece as part of your on-chain order book. And for those who don't know, I mean, it's proudly displayed on their website, but one of the reasons that Injective kind of came into the spotlight was for creating kind of the first on-chain derivatives order book. And I think because you're talking about the applications and their ability to plug and play, maybe we should just dive into some functionality questions, some specifics here. So, when should we expect to see perpetuals on Astroport? I'll just leave that question there and see what the team thinks.
I didn't know we expect derivatives on or perps on Astroport. That's new to me.
Well, maybe we'll rephrase it. So is this something the team has considered, given kind of the functionality of Injective?
Honestly, I think it's more important to focus in this case. So Jose mentioned and kind of talked a bit about the idea of an AMM and a DEX being two different things. And in crypto in general, I see protocols as ideally being built to do one thing really well, like most or many businesses or startups in like Web 2. So I think I would say most probably not, and it's more important or valuable to focus on the AMM part and not expand to perps. At least that's my view.
Yeah, the way I see it is you want to kind of build it step by step and think about what primitives you would need to build the decentralized Binance or whatever, right? And so I think part of that is, and kind of the base of that is like spot liquidity, which I think is where Astroport comes in. Obviously, Injective has pretty decent spot liquidity through the order book, but the only people who really participate there are professional market makers or at least advanced users. I think what Astroport does is it opens up the sort of market for who can participate in that liquidity provision. And we'll be working on ways to, or we're researching ways to integrate that with the order book as well. So it acts as like kind of one liquidity layer. And then I think once you have deep spot liquidity, that enables you to then do stuff like margin trading, right? Because there's enough liquidity to do liquidations and stuff like that. And then I think obviously perps is the next primitive. It already exists on Injective, but I think kind of putting it all together into sort of one account is where like the ultimate UX lies. But you got to sort of build these things, I think, like one by one, and they are being built like by separate teams. There's separate teams working on perps, working on the Oracle problem, working on like binary options, and I think eventually the goal, at least from my perspective, from a UX perspective, would be to connect all of those so you can kind of do them all from one account and have that like the. And we used to talk about this before FTX went down, but it's kind of even more relevant now, like the decentralized FTX experience, right? And I think Astroport is like one part of that, but it's not going to do everything. It's going to focus on that one part, which is kind of opening up who can participate in liquidity provision.
Yeah, I do want to note that like generally it's always good to work on things step by step from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to 100, and certainly one of the most fundamental and most critical infrastructure is focusing on those kind of like the spot layer to start, and then really perfecting that component, because a lot of people tend to think that perpetual market making is quite simple and relatively easier to do without much need for hedging compared to spot market making. But in reality, it is the tail risk is just extremely immense, and certainly it requires a lot of very deep thinking and a lot of adjustments of edge cases and perfecting hedging to be able to properly LP for perp markets.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad, and it wasn't a trick question, and so I'm glad that the team is focused on kind of having that sequential approach to building the best product. But what I would ask is, I think it's always good. Maybe people in the audience are not as familiar with these terms of spot margin trading. So maybe just from like a user experience, and maybe this is a question more from the Astroport team. How do you envision things for the user changing, right? They go in, they connect their wallet to Astroport, and they connect to the Injective chain. How do you kind of visualize some of the opportunities here for the user to take advantage of this like centralized, I guess, the centralized exchange experience on a decentralized exchange? What would that look like to you?
I don't think that will be solely covered by Astroport, like the whole centralized exchange experience. I see the Astroport UX going more towards, again, the AMM side, where you don't necessarily use it to trade or whatever, do trade on margin or whatever you want to do. You use it more to park assets that you have on Injective inside Astroport pools that ideally kind of from trading fees kind of get kind of trading fees from these pools, and kind of the liquidity on these pools gets listed on order books. And then these order books or the apps that cover that part handle trading. So I don't really see Astroport or like the UX or the UI handling trading.
Yeah, I think the general wonderful thing about DeFi and the composability nature of it is that there's not a lot of intentional or kind of forceful gatekeeping and building a moat around congregating or centralizing around one single application or one single platform. It's all about kind of this consortium or this alliance of different types of ecosystem community and protocols providing their unique value prop, just like a nation state, and being able to interop in the least friction, still retaining the user experience and the composability of what a typical close ecosystem might look like, for example, like Apple, etc. but at the same time, really sharing the value and making sure that all these individual components get to focus on what they do best and to really, contribute to a much stronger world.
Yeah, and just to answer your question on the spot and margin stuff. So if you think about it from maybe most people have used a centralized exchange, spot is just literally buying and selling coins and holding them in your wallet, right? You go to an exchange and you just buy some Bitcoin or you buy some Ethereum and you have the spot asset in your wallet, right? And I think that's probably the most basic thing you need on a DEX is to be able to buy and sell coins with enough liquidity, with a good user experience, etc. And then kind of the next level of that is, okay, I want to buy more coins than the actual amount that the actual amount of assets that I have. So I need to take on leverage in some way. And then there's like different ways to take on leverage, right? The first one is margin, where you borrow. So if you're going long, you would borrow some, or if you're bullish on the asset, you'd borrow some stable coins and buy more of it, right? Which means if it goes up, you make more money. If it goes down, you lose more money and you can get liquidated, right? And then perps and derivatives are kind of other like constructions and ways to get leverage, more advanced ones for more advanced users. And so that covers kind of like the trading portion of what you'd want from an exchange. And then the other portion is like earning yield on your assets, right? And most exchanges have like a lending functionality. Some also have a staking functionality. And I'd say LPing, like what you do on Astroport, also fits into that, right? And so you have like ability to earn yield. You have an ability to trade into other assets, including like long tail assets and the majors. And then probably the third big part, which I think is something that you want to build later down the line, is well, first of all, you want to connect them both, right? You want to be able to have your like staking and your LPing kind of act as collateral for your trading and have it all in one account, or to be able to do like leverage staking, right? Maybe you think like the yield on you want to earn more yield, so you're borrowing to stake or borrowing to LP, and having all that in like very easy to do in one account, not having like the Binance experience where you have like 1,000 different accounts and stuff like that. I think is the base. And I think the next part you need is sort of, because this covers like what I'd call like the investment part of finance, right? Like your deferred spending, speculating on shit coins or earning yield, etc. And then you want to like be able to spend your assets easily, and that's like a whole other part where you need whatever, someone to build a debit card, fiat on ramps and off ramps, and like really good like subscription solutions and stuff like that. And to me, that's like the full scale solution where you don't need to leave. You can use your wallet as your like one-stop shop for your finances. But you're building it step by step. And Astroport, I'd say, is like one part on the yield portion, right, where you can earn yield on your idle assets by contributing liquidity to the order book, which also makes it easier for people to trade against it.
Perfect. And that's exactly what we were trying to get into. We started with the first couple of steps there, you telling us like what you're focusing on, but I think we really got a lot of the bigger vision out of you there. So thank you, Jose, for that and speaking on it. I just would also like to remind the audience at this point, we're getting close to 30 minutes, and feel free at any point. I know I see some of you in the audience here. I see a lot of familiar faces: Ryan, MB, Finn. We have John Galt in the audience too. So if at any point you have questions, feel free to just request, and we will bring you up. But until that point, I will continue to ask away. Unless there's, I've been dominating the conversation for a little bit, so let me just open this up to the teams for a second. Is there anything so far that we haven't really been getting to with the questions? Any alpha you want to share? Anything you really want the audience to know about, these Astroport launching on Injective and kind of the opportunities it's going to bring?
I can start if you want. So one of the first reasons we were very interested in Astroport is one, they had sort of showcased how successful they can be within the Terra ecosystem. I think they were doing several $100 million a day just in volume, right? I think what ecosystem that Injective has built to date has been the order book ecosystem, right? In the last year, we processed around $8 billion just through the order book. And that just primarily came from perps and also larger spot pairs. But one thing to note for the audience is order books and AMMs tend to shine in different areas. Like Jose and Eric were mentioning earlier as well. Order books are usually reliant on liquidity from market makers or bigger institutional players. I think we've done a great job in terms of onboarding those institutions into the order book, guys like Jump, etc. So now what we lack is better liquidity for long tail assets. Long tail assets usually refers to, in colloquial terms, shitcoins in the crypto space. So typically these market makers will only touch larger pairs, right? They'll touch, let's say, BTC perps or ETH perps, but they're not really going to touch smaller asset pairs, right? And that's a shame because most crypto retail actually wants two things. They want to earn yield on assets, and two, they want access to sort of more speculative assets that they can't find on a typical SEX, right? I think that's where DEXs truly shine. So one core alpha or sort of reasoning to think through is now we have Astroport, so now we can actually have better liquidity for these longer tail assets, in addition to allowing for users to earn yield on these long tail assets through the LP pools. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, you get a way more capital efficient environment across these arbitrage opportunities that open up across the AMM and the order book that's already on Injective, right? So now you could have larger institutions that are providing really great liquidity to the order book. And now you also have retail traders that are able to come in a very seamless manner, whereas maybe they couldn't before on an order book, right? Because it's just a simpler UX experience for retail to come in to an AMM. And I think lastly, and probably most interestingly for me, because of recent integrations Injective has also done with the world outside of Cosmos, with things like Wormhole, etc., you're also opening up the venue to more chains. So chains like Solana, chains like Aptos, Avalanche, you name it. And these assets were typically not available for Cosmos users. But now with the Wormhole integration, we can bring these assets over. So now you can start to see better sort of trading opportunities across different cross-chain asset pairs. You could, for example, have a sole BTC market on Cosmos, which is great. And I think that's one step in terms of decentralized exchanges getting closer to their centralized counterparts, because I think one thing DEXs usually lack is just access to asset pairs, especially from different chains. Usually they tend to be siloed, but now we can start to make the ecosystem much more composable, have cross-chain assets, have better margining opportunities. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing to add is that, like the whole point of the Injective ecosystem and the whole point of DeFi is to, be able to democratize finance for everyone. And market making, providing liquidity is one of the primary and the largest revenue driver and profit driver for, sophisticated quantitative trading firms, HFT shops, and, most of the hedge funds out there. And this was, generally overly sophisticated and overly complicated for the general public to perform and to do. And this is for the first time, within DeFi and, for the Injective ecosystem as well, where there's a kind of like a primitive and protocol where basically you get to provide liquidity, you get to market make, you get to participate in these, like effectively speaking, like alpha generating strategies in a, completely permissionless way. And this is, truly exciting for, all of us involved, because, if you want to disrupt finance, you probably want to start off with the part that's most gatekept. And, obviously it's highly competitive for, from a liquidity perspective, for people to, pursue the same thing for, some of the more dominant pairs such as BTC, ETH, etc. But I think the truly wondrous thing is that, AMM, truly excels at and for the general public, for a general user, truly excels at providing liquidity for a lot of these long-tailed assets, and to be able to be at the same playing field, if not a superior playing field, because I know how talented the Astroport team is compared to a lot of sophisticated algorithmic traders.
Yeah, those are really good points, and I think at a high level, like the way I think about it is you have order book so that advanced market makers, professional traders, just sophisticated users of all sorts can interact with, and they can like adopt advanced strategies, and it just gives you like ultimate flexibility, right, in how you want to trade a certain asset. And then you have AMMs, which are literally like automated market making strategies, right? They provide some automated strategy that LPs can buy into. They're all in the same one that allows them to sort of passively earn some yield on those assets, obviously with the risks of impermanent loss and stuff, which will depend on the algorithm. But like the way I see it is that, and this is a very sort of loose metaphor, but that AMMs kind of do for liquidity provision what kind of Airbnb did to hotels, right? Where it opens up this idle capacity. So like Airbnb opened up this idle capacity of extra rooms in people's houses that they could then use to house people. And it opened it up in a major scale, right? Whereas before you had to have a specialized like building just to act as a hotel. Now anyone could like run a mini hotel basically in there and utilize their spare capacity. And MMs are the same thing, where everyone had these assets they were holding in their wallet, and suddenly they could provide they could use these to actually earn some yield by providing liquidity to traders. And I think similarly to how Airbnb literally started off as an airbed in someone's living room, like not an experience comparable to a hotel in any way, but now you can stay at like castles and lighthouses and all sorts of crazy stuff. I think AMMs will go through the same journey, where you start off with XYK, which is a very simple algorithm, has a lot of problems, but sort of showcases the potential and the demand for AMMs, right? The fact that there's still billions of dollars sitting in these very simple strategies. And then over time, you're gonna like build more complex strategies, refine them until they become like competitive with professional market makers. And that's kind of the journey that I see AMMs going on, and why I think it's such an important and like huge kind of primitive.
Yeah. On a slightly more technical topic, I think one of the most interesting, and this is definitely something that's never happened in DeFi before, by having AMM and providing liquidity directly in an environment that has order book, that has these type of informed liquidity and informed flow, you basically get to prevent a lot of the IL that was kind of present within the traditional kind of AMM ecosystem, because most of the flow coming in are not adverse selection. It's informed and uninformed flow, and because of the order book dynamics, a lot of like this collaboration will signal that for the first time there will be an AMM that has a lot more kind of like a liquidity information and market information from a smart contract level than anywhere else, and that is something that's truly wonderful.
Thank you for your points. Yeah, both sides there, and we're really diving into an interesting discussion here. Don't want to stop that too much, and I don't think I'm going to forget that Airbnb analogy. Wow, for AMMs. Well said, well put. But we do have a guest here, Josh, and so Josh, now's your time. Feel free to ask your question.
Hi everyone. So first of all, Astroport is really tight. I like the UX. My question was, is Astroport is only on Injective, or it's going to be shared with other? It's also in Terra, Luna, etc., or it's exclusively in Injective?
Yeah, Astroport is live on Terra right now, but Injective will be the first outpost outside of Terra. It is obviously live on Terra from when it launched and then the relaunch. But yeah, it's going to be Injective is going to be the first outpost outside of Terra in the main focus.
Okay. So the third question, we go to the second question. It's like the liquidity which is created in Astroport. Is it shared with the other dApps which will be created? I think I got the response like it will be used in the order book and all. So I just want to be clear to confirm: it will be shared with other dApps, or is it exclusively for Astroport only?
For now, the liquidity on Injective testnet at least is only on Astroport, obviously Astroport liquidity. But with the order book integration, when that will come, that will list the liquidity on Astroport on Injective's order book.
Yeah, and another thing to mention is you'll essentially get access to the liquidity anyways, because market makers or traders would definitely be arbing across this AMM plus the order book infra, right? So sure, there might not be shared liquidity from day one, but in essence, there basically is, right? Because of the ARB, et cetera, it would just create a much more capital efficient environment across the AMM and the order book. Whereas before, the only thing you had was the order book, and it was siloed to just that. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. But ultimately, the goal is like obviously an AMM creates like a curve in which it's literally a curve with prices at which it's willing to buy or sell a pair of assets, right? And so all of those like all points on that curve can be seen as basically like limit orders on an order book. And I think the ideal kind of solution would be one where there's an order book that harnesses the AMM liquidity, which also means you can do cool stuff on the, like, for instance, when you're doing liquidations, instead of having, this is more in the weeds, but instead of having like the liquidation bonus like you have right now, you can do liquidations into an order book, and AMM sort of liquidity providers are effectively like participating in those liquidations, right? And you just have like one unified liquidity pool, which is I think the goal. But yeah, like Mirza said, in the meanwhile, that'll be like bridged by arbitrageurs.
Did that answer your question, Josh?
Perfectly. Thank you very much, Ed.
Yeah, thanks for coming up and joining. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I don't have any requests right now. However, I think he may be a little bit tired right now due to that 4:30 a.m. But I do have a question that was sent in. And so it's a little bit of a longer one and maybe a challenging one, but let me read this to the team. It looks like it's directed at Astroport. So he writes, a while back, LexNode posted a thread on his legal opinion about the development releases of DeFi projects to quote, bad boys move in silence and violence, he quoted. And about the same time, Astroport released a theoretical SLAM or shared liquidity automated market maker. And the idea being sharing liquidity across satellite chains. So that was the intro. But the actual question was, is it reasonable to assume that this deployment on Injective is the first of many satellites to come under a shared liquidity AMM? Asking for a lot of alpha here, but elephant in the room. What can you say?
Yeah, I don't think we can really comment on that too much. Yeah, like the Slam design was released by Delphi Labs, and we're always doing research on kind of interesting areas of the space. And obviously, like we're especially interested in areas that influence the projects we're contributing to. I think the Slam was like a first design. We've gotten a lot of feedback. I think there's improvements to make. There's also other designs to consider. We received one recently that was super interesting from a smart team in the space. So yeah, but I think investing in something like that will only make sense when there's enough liquidity, when there's enough happening on the chains that sort of building that makes sense. And I think our number one or like the team's number one focus is more to like drive activity to the current pools, build on places like Injective where there's interesting potential to build like useful products that make people want to use this, rather than build a bridge, because for a bridge to be useful, you need the stuff that it's connecting to be places that people want to go to and from, right? And I think certainly on Terra right now, not seeing enough activity for that to be the case. But I think Injective is like one of the places that we see having the highest potential for that to happen.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely a challenging but direct question, but sometimes those are the best questions. We have another speaker up here. I know we're getting close, but Jacob, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, of course. So my question is, Why does Astroport deploy on Injective testnet and not other chains? What is the most difficult thing when you implementing in your project? When you start phase one, new early access? Yeah, that's my question.
Probably one for you, Stefan. I guess what's the most difficult thing of deploying on a new chain? That's yeah, or yeah.
There are a couple of small things that add up probably to a big thing, which is pulling data from the chain, meaning having some kind of indexer to see what's happening each block, like parsing transactions and seeing what's happening. So you can show maybe something on a UI, or you expose an endpoint, whatever, a bot that does something. So yeah, indexing in general and backend work is the most troublesome especially in Cosmos, where we don't really have an easy plug-and-play solution like the graph from Ethereum.
Okay, thank you. I get it.
I think one thing Injective users might want to know actually is what's different effectively from the initial deployment that used to be live on Terra back in the day versus the V2 deployment. I think if you could talk about some of those features, it'd be nice.
Right. The main one related to Injective is the fact that on testnet right now, between Terra testnet and Injective testnet, people with Astro on testnet can govern the Astroport deployment from Injective. So you can vote on the Terra side, and then if the vote passes and can be executed, it gets IBC'd over to Injective, where it does, like, for example, it can upgrade a contract or it can change a parameter. And it does that through a satellite contract on the Injective side that's managed through IBC by assembly on the Terra side. And the second big thing is that all the swap fees from Injective, from the Injective deployment of Astroport, get IBC'd back or bridged. They get swapped to Astro on the Injective side, and then that Astro gets IBC'd back to Terra, where it goes to stakers as usual, because that already happens on Terra, but this is a mechanism to do the same thing, but between multiple chains that now send their fees where stakers are on the Terra side.
Very interesting, Stefan. And I'm just wondering, I want to make sure I've gotten this correctly, and maybe for other people in the audience, they're wondering too. So your first point was about basically cross-chain governance. So you're saying that you could vote on governance from your native chain, let's say Terra, for, governance-related issues on Injective. Did I catch that first part correctly?
Well, yes. I mean, all the governance happens on Terra, and then all the other deployments, such as the one on Injective, are managed by that vote or the votes that happen on Terra. So yes.
Okay, great. And then your second point about the trading or swap fees being converted back to Astro and then sent back to IBC to Terra. Are you talking about swap fees on the order book? Or are you talking about the the instance of the AMM on Injective?
It's the instance of the AMM, so it's exactly the same thing as on Terra. But the only difference is that fees get swapped to Astro on the Injective side, and then that Astro has to be bridged back to Terra, because initially it does get bridged from Terra to Injective in order to create pools between Astro and other assets. And then we use these pools on the Injective side, or the maker uses the pools on the Injective side or in the Injective side to swap all these fees to Astro, and then the Astro gets bridged back to Terra and to stakers. So it's just one extra step compared to what happens on Terra.
Okay, got it. Just wanted to make sure I understood that piece correctly. Another thing, and I think Mirza kind of alluded to it a little bit here, but the piece about the cross-chain connections from the Injective side. So there's 4 pairs currently listed on testnet: Astro, Injective, USDT, and Ape. So what are some of the other pairs you think the audience could realistically see, over the course of this process? I'm not saying upon launch, but what are some? What do you foresee?
I think the Injective team already mentioned that other assets through Wormhole can come from other chains such as Solana and Aptos or other whatever. Fill in with your favorite chain. So I could see all these assets that aren't in Cosmos at all coming to Injective and then potentially being listed on Astroport.
Yeah, and effectively when the mainnet goes live, right, anyone can create a new liquidity pool. So the world is your oyster, so to speak. You could technically list any market in a very permissionless environment on Injective via Astroport. So that's another benefit.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, and thank you for the clarification there. I actually do have a question here that I want to pull up from the one and only John Gold. Lurk around fine. If you don't know him, he is a testnet sleuth. He talked about and I'm giving him a little credit here, he talked about the launch on Injective testnet before people knew about it months ahead. But anyways, so he wanted to ask this for the Astroport teams, how Astro incentives are going to be split between chains. So for example, right now, the Astro pool on Terra gets a certain amount of, Astro incentives. But now there's also going to be an Astro pool on Injective. So is that new pool going to get a share of Astro incentives from Terra? How is that kind of going to work, splitting that?
So that's up to governance to decide how they split incentives. But from a technical point of view, governance will need to vote on moving some Astro or bridging some Astro from Terra to Injective via IBC, putting that Astro on the generator on Injective, the Astroport generator on Injective, and then defining a distribution schedule like the one that's active right now on Terra that says how much Astro is being dripped per block if we're given to people who LP and lock in the generator, like per block in total. And then also deciding which pools get that Astro that gets dripped every block.
I got a question. Do you think is it possible to convert Astro tokens to Injective? I just want to know if the existing of two tokens will not dilute the value of Astro and Injective, or it's totally okay to have two tokens.
Yeah, go ahead. But I would say no, it doesn't dilute anything. You can think of it as an analogy. Like Injective is a chain token, Astroport is an AMM token. If anything, there's more synergies between them, and they can grow together. Obviously, that should not legal advice. That is not speculative advice on the token itself. I'm just saying they do not dilute one another in any way.
Okay.
I had another question. So there, obviously there being a number of dApps already on Injective. So I'm curious, has the Astroport team, or maybe even the Injective team, thought about this? Any sort of partnerships, integrations with some of the existing infrastructure that's already there? I know we've talked about a lot of it in general terms, but is there anything you can tell us on that side?
I guess I can keep it very vague and high level. So effectively, Injective will have primitives for every single functionality within finance. So you can think of not just exchanges, but also lending options, etc. So once, you could basically surmise a number of different use cases, right? So effectively, let's say you have a lending protocol on Injective. So let's say, profits you make trading can then be put into a lending pool, which generates you more yield, right? So effectively, this creates a positive feedback loop where your assets go a longer way. throughout the Injective ecosystem, where it's not just siloed to just one use case, but rather you can take assets from one use case and deploy them on another, and thus generate new use cases and new outcomes for yourself.
Sure. And yeah, thank you for the response. I know that maybe we can't pull all the alpha out of you guys. Is there anything else the Astroport team wanted to add on this? Or do you think he kind of covered it?
I think that he covered it pretty well.
No worries. Yep. And I think we're getting close, very close to the hour mark. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. And so I think this is a good natural point to just, we'll go around the room. We'll go to the two teams. Anyone that's here from Injective or Astroport, kind of your final words, anything you want to ask of the audience, final thoughts, a call to action. I'll be sure to give you all a plug here at the end as well, but just anything you would like to share with the community today that we have not covered yet.
No, nothing for me. All I'd say mainly is to just sort of like be patient on the product side, both on just in crypto generally, but specifically here as well. I think there's a lot of primitives being built by disparate teams that are like sort of optimizing and working out the details. And I think eventually there'll be a moment where all these can be connected and the whole will be sort of much greater than the sum of its parts in terms of what you can do. So yeah, no specific alpha, but just kind of keeping that in mind, where I think that's across DeFi as a whole. I think over the next 2 years, as I said previously, we're going to see experiences that are like superior in UX to decentralized exchanges, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, and don't forget about Ninja Pass on Helix. That is how you get access to test it and check out the early alpha.
Yeah, so basically one thing I guess we haven't mentioned on the call is the Astroport deployment is occurring in phases, and right now it is a closed beta. So the only way to get access is by being in the Astroport or Injective communities. And for Injective in particular, you have to have a Ninja Pass, which is effectively your sort of pass into getting early access to different products and new dApps on Injective. And right now you can still get that pass by trading on exchange dApps like Helix. So that is your answer for how you can get access in the meantime. Over the coming weeks, I will leave it up to the Astro team to determine how they open up testnet access more, but that is how the closed beta will operate moving forward.
Okay, and that, unless Stefan or anyone else, and you feel free to cut me off if you do, but that's great, and thank you for bringing up the phases. I know you can read more about that in the post by Astroport as well, kind of like the sequential phases of, we're starting right now, closed testnet. Eventually there is a plan to open it up. And so, get involved, just like Mirza said. So if you want to get in on that. And then other things I'd just like to remind everyone in this space, maybe they're too humble to say, but just remember to follow Astroport and Injective on Twitter. They're doing amazing things for the community, building in a bear market, and staying very vocal and active with the community, which I know everyone appreciates. So thank you to the teams for joining us today. And I know I'm looking forward to more updates and definitely more alpha in the future. So just wanted to thank you for coming on the call. I think we also have Terra Spaces in here, so shout out to them for recording. As always, Finn's giving a hearts up. We love you too, Finn. So this space will be recorded, but Finn also puts that extra love and effort into it to make it a great product for you to go back and listen to. So I wanted to give him a little bit of a shout out. But again, thank you all for coming to this space. I'm really honored to be here and host it for you. And unless there's anything else, we will speak soon and look forward to more alpha on Injective and Astroport. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Speak soon.
Thanks, guys.